Good evening, everyone. And we are in our final chapter of Deuteronomy chapter 34. This is the ending of the book of Deuteronomy, as well as recording the end of the life of Moses. Moses went up from the plains of Moab. Now, the plains of Moab is a very interesting place. When we first started, I had actually attempted to describe in chapter 1 that the children of Israel were there beside the Jordan on the eastern shore in the plains of Moab, just north of the Dead Sea. Now, when you say plains, this word really also means the wilderness. Now, whether it is that place or not, I'm not absolutely sure, but the word here is the wilderness. Now, maybe it's there at the north of the Dead Sea. Maybe it's behind the hills there. But nevertheless, what will be interesting to note is that Moses went from the lowlands of Moab to Mount Nebo. Now, Mount Nebo is, well, we also don't really know exactly where the place is, although we may say that it is somewhere where it is presently called Mount Nebo. But as you know, when Moses went up there and it's a mountain that they call Nebo, there is no signboard that says that it's Mount Nebo, but we'll take the traditional present day site as Mount Nebo. When I was there in the place and I was asking the people, how would they know that this location is Mount Nebo? The reply was that the Jordan area may most likely be the place because it is perhaps around the highest peak, and assuming that that would be the peak that could see right across to the right and to the left across the Jordan as well. So traditionally that's what happens, but Moses went up, and that's an important element. He climbed up to the highest peak, to the top of Pisgah, which is the mountain range, which is across from Jericho, right? Jericho is across the Jordan, which is on the western side of the river. And here, Jehovah showed him. Now, the word showed him is to make him see. This is the word show. I mean, the English word is show, but the Hebrew word literally cause him to see all the land of Gilead as far as Dan. Now, you need to understand that in this context here, Dan is now known as the northernmost, right? Which tells us that in chapter 34, it may be written by somebody else because Dan is in the north is actually a later date. The land of Gilead is actually on the eastern shore of the Jordan, south of the Galilee. And in that area is also Naphtali, the land of Ephraim and Manasseh. And you remember, Manasseh has a piece already at Bashan, but Manasseh on the east, the western shore of the Jordan is also Manasseh. And then in the south of Naphtali would be the land of Ephraim, and all the land of Yehudah, which is where you would see Jerusalem. As far as the Western Sea, the word of the Western Sea is the sea at the back. Well, if you had followed in the lessons, in the Hebrew, the word at the back is actually the west, in the front is actually the east. And so it is called the Western Sea in English, but fundamentally and literally, it will be the sea at the back. So at the back of the land of Judah will be the Mediterranean Sea. And then we talk about the south and the plain of the valley of Jericho, which is right across from the Jordan when they cross, to the city of palm trees as far as Zoar. Zoar is a place where we would know as the southern part of well, they call the Salt Sea, right? We would have read this in Genesis chapter 13 and 14. And basically what we are seeing is Moses looked right. See, he stands in Mount Nebo. He looks right. As far as he can look right, he would see Dan. Then he sees Gilead. He sees Naphtali and Ephraim. And just north of it is Manasseh. And then coming down south is Yehudah. And then he can see as far back as Judah. It's an incredible view that he would have then. And great eyesight, I must say. Because today you can't see it to the Mediterranean Sea. And he looks left of Judah. He sees the south of Judah into the plain of Jericho, right in front of the Jordan. And then to the leftmost, way left, to the south of the Jordan, he will see the city of palm trees as far as Zoar. So he has a bird's eye view to sweep from right to left, technically speaking, from the compass, from the north of the land to the south of the land as far as Zoar. And here the Lord said to Moses, "This is the land which I swore to give Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I will give it to your descendants." And this is the descendants they are looking at. "I have caused you to see it." If you look at this, "cause you to see it" is exactly the same word as "showed him." But the translators prefer to have some very good English words to follow up so that I guess you can actually understand the Hebrew in a more English way. With your eyes. So cause you to see it with your eyes is really to show him. That would be the Hebrew word. But you shall not cross over there. Now we have read this. You shall not cross over there in the entire book of Deuteronomy a number of times. It is not just once or twice, but a number of times as a reminder that Moses kept telling the Israelites, "I'm not going with you. I'm not going with you." So who is going with you? Joshua. And now from verse 5, you can read this. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there. And you need to understand the word "die" there is met his end. All right. He wasn't killed. He met his end, and that would be his natural end in the land of Moab. Now, who is from the land of Moab? Remember? Ruth. Ruth is from the land of Moab, and Moses died there according to the word of the Lord. What God has said way up front. Way up front. And this is something that they cannot deny, and Moses can't, because he has been told he can't cross, so he would die there. And so they didn't cross the Jordan until Moses died. And God buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor. Now, Beth Peor is in Moab. And these would be locations where you would probably remember in the time of Balaam, right? Where the biggest problems happened there when they went after other gods, and Balaam taught the king of Moab how to entice the men of Israel. And God slew a number of them that day. But no one knows his grave to this day. To this day means at the time of writing. Now, we don't know whether it's known thereafter, but Moses was 120 years old when he died. And that's a long time. And if you recall, his days would be 40 in the palace, 40 in Midian, and 40 in the wilderness. And right here adds up to 120 when he died. He was very strong. His eyes were not dim. The idea here is the eyes did not grow dim. The idea of growing dim is grow faint. So we can say that Moses' eyes did not have cataract. He saw very well. His natural vigor did not diminish. The idea of diminish is, well, what should we say? Did not run away from him. Did not escape him. And his natural vigor literally means his freshness. And I think this will give us a glimpse of the health of Moses. It should also give us a clear understanding of why he can climb up Mount Sinai a couple of times. He was really fit, and he was unlike the men of his age, I must say. And the children of Israel wept for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days. And so the days of weeping and mourning for Moses ended. What does this say for the period of mourning? This is the period of mourning. It's 30 days. And the children of Israel participated in this. And that will tell us a little bit about the practice as well. Is it wrong to cry for another person who has passed on? Obviously not. Because humanly speaking, they would miss him. He was a leader for a good 40 years. And he had experiences. He was told by the children of Israel to be the intermediator, the mediator, to speak to God, to bring back to them all the commands of God. And we read that he wrote it down and passed it to the Levites. Obviously, in these 40 years, they would have gone through the thick and thin with him. So 30 days, a period of mourning, and a time of how would you say, reflection, of grieving, and of outpouring of grief. The words weeping and mourning. The first one is weeping. Weeping means to cry, to shed tears. Right? Weeping, and the word is not and, is of. Weeping of mourning. And this word mourning would be to lament. The weeping of lamenting. And then finally, of Moses. And so the idea here, we have the mourning rites for Moses. And the mourning rites for Moses include the shedding of tears. And that is how this phrase is spoken of. And when it has ended, the word ended means to finish. It also means come to an end. I think from these 5 verses, we will be able to see the practice, the character of the nature of the Israelites, that for those people that they mourn, they cry, and it lasts for 30 days. And that's a major crying, right? because Moses is the chosen of God to lead them to this point in time, and his days have drawn near. And that's what it means. Now, Joshua, verse 9, Joshua's full name is Yehoshua, the son of Nun. The son of Nun is pronounced N-U-N, is noon, like noontime, right? The son of Nun says he was full. The word full here is filled. Filled to fullness. Right? That is what it means. With the spirit of wisdom. Now, one of the words that we need to see is the spirit here is ruach, of wisdom. And wisdom here will tell us a couple of things. He is intelligent. He has experience. He knows the word of God. And with this, he can apply. And with this, that's how we would understand as wisdom. Do not misunderstand the wisdom as we currently in our modern day life looks at wisdom. In the ancient Hebrew kind of wisdom, and you'd see this a lot in the book of Deuteronomy, as well as in the book of Ecclesiastes, in the book of Proverbs. And this really gives the picture of Joshua, why he was given this task. Because the spirit of wisdom, he's full of it, which means that he is very intelligent, very well versed in the art of war, very experienced as walking with God, very well versed with the word of God, and he knows how to apply this. And hence, when words come out of his mouth, the appearance would be, wow, man of wisdom. And that is how the spirit of wisdom is expressed. It is not merely a supernatural infusion, like, he knows nothing and suddenly zap, he's got wisdom. So wisdom doesn't come from zapping. Wisdom comes from experience. But not everyone with experience has wisdom, obviously. You need to combine intelligence, experience, and the word of God. And by walking with Moses for 40 years would have taught him a lot more things. And he is able to apply, and as such, Moses laying hands on him. Now understand this. The idea of Moses laying hands on him is the fact that he has been delegated, empowered, right? Empowered, delegated, and he has been with Moses, and obviously God is with Joshua. All right. So I'm not saying that there is no supernatural empowerment. I'm saying that the supernatural empowerment is like how God empowered the artisans in Exodus chapter 30, 32, right? I think it's 32. That they already is in the trade, but God gave them extra on top of what they have to the fullness, so that they can actually make and build and craft the tabernacle for God. And here, I would say that Joshua already have the intellect, the experience, the knowledge, and the word of God, and God topped it up to full, to overflowing, that you cannot deny that God is with him. So the children of Israel heeded him. The word heeded him means
hear him. And to hear him means to listen to him and then to decide to obey him, to follow him. And they did as the Lord has commanded Moses. What did the Lord command Moses to tell the children of Israel? That Joshua would be the one to replace him. If you recall, we had gone through that in chapters 30 to 32. And by that visible delegation of authority, the children of Israel listened to Joshua. Verse 10. One of the things that is said is that and since then would be a phrase that's used at the time of writing verse 10. And I suppose it's not by Moses because it's talking about Moses, right? Like Moses. So since then has not arisen in Israel a prophet. And by prophet, it is Navi, whom the Lord knew face to face. And this is important. God knows Moses face to face. This is character number one of Moses. And had given him all the powers to do signs and wonders which the Lord sent him to do in the land of Egypt before Pharaoh, before all his servants, and in all his land. Now, if you recall, this number 2 was done in Exodus chapter 7 onwards, all the way through chapter 15, the crossing of the Red Sea. And in our reflections, we would see that it was always to reflect back on what God has done. God is not continually doing signs and wonders, as you can see. And all of the instructions to Moses was to remind the Israelites, remember everything that was done in the land of Egypt before Pharaoh and all his servants and in his land. And then it says, number 3, and by all that mighty power and all that great terror which Moses performed in the sight of all Israel. In the sight means in the eyes of all Israel. And it is Moses who did it. Now, we would say God did all these, yes. But God did it by the hand of Moses. And hence, this demonstrates how intimate that God knows Moses. And in that sense, it says, there is not arisen any single prophet like this. There are other prophets, but not one whom God knew face to face, whom God did signs and wonders, like in the land of Egypt before Pharaoh and his servants in his land, and with this mighty power that all Israel can see, all 12 tribes. And so not a single tribe can say, I didn't see anything. And in this way, God had demonstrated visually that Moses is by far the one supreme. And hence, all through the generations, they will always recall and point back to Moses. Why? Because they say that Moses is the one whom God knew face to face and gave the commandments. And that's why they have what they call the law of Moses. But actually, it's not the law of Moses, right? Moses didn't give the law. God gave Moses the law, gave the 10 commandments on tablet, broke it the first time, got it the second time, and was placed into the Ark of the Covenant. And hence, Moses is special in the entire history of the Israelites because all Israel saw, very visual, all the signs and wonders. Did Moses do any more? Obviously. Right? Moses was told to stretch out his hand and the sea parted back. And God sent quail, sent manna, and struck the rock, and water came out gushing to feed the million of people. But all of these were not really remembered a whole lot. And know this, that the miracles that God did, that the sandals never wore out, the coat on the back never wore out, were all miracles that God did. But God had always had a soft spot for Moses, because God called Moses to lead the people out of Egypt, and thereby making them a holy nation. And with this, we have an understanding that Moses is not quite like any other prophets anymore, because none of these wonders ever happened, and none of them can say, I knew God knew face to face. Now, in what way did God speak to Moses? I don't think it is like sitting across the table, having a teh tarik, but more of some visual display. And that's how God says face to face in a very intimate way. Now, I can't describe exactly how, but face to face literally means very intimately. God was speaking to Moses, Moses was speaking back to God, and that kind of a personal interaction is very rare and mostly described only in the Torah, in the 5 books of Moses. And with this, we come to the end of the book of Deuteronomy of chapter 34.